Welcome to section 2.2, and in this video we are going to learn a little bit more about fractions, and we are actually going to begin doing some operations with them. We are going to learn how to add two fractions together that have common denominators. So first things first, when we add fractions, we need to have the denominator, this bottom number here, equal to the same number. This is known as a common denominator. So essentially what that's saying is if we want to add two fractions together, they both need to have the same bottom number, or the same denominator, or in other words, a common denominator. So in this following example, circle the fractions that have a common denominator. I encourage you to pause the video and try it on your own, and assuming you have given it a go, let's work through it. So looking at all the denominators, these bottom numbers here, do we notice any denominators that have the same number? And in that case, we do. We have a 2 here, a 2 here, and a 2 here. So therefore, all three of these fractions have common denominators of 2. And just so we are also aware, it does not matter if the fraction is negative or positive. The denominator is always going to be the same regardless if it's negative or positive. So looking at the next section, we are going to be talking about how to simplify fractions. So essentially what simplifying fractions does is it takes larger numbers and it makes them into smaller numbers without actually changing the value of the fraction. In example 1, I will go a little bit more in detail about it so we can wrap our head around what we're actually doing when we're simplifying a fraction. But let's first talk about how to even do that. So to simplify a fraction, we want to divide the numerator, this top number, and denominator by a common value, until the numerator and denominators can only be divided by themselves in 1. So that's a lot of words, a lot of stuff at once. But let's work through example 1 together, and it'll start making more sense once we work through it. So in example 1, we have the fraction 2/4. Now to simplify this, we have to ask ourselves, is there a number that we can divide 2 and 4 by evenly to make it a smaller number? And if you're thinking we can divide 2, you are correct. So we can divide 2 by the numerator and divide 2 in the denominator. And 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 4 divided by 2 is 2. And once we get here, we have 1/2, and we can't divide another common value that divides into 1 and 2 evenly without reducing these numbers. Because, we could divide by 1, but 1 divided by 1 is 1, and 2 divided by 1 is 2. So we're not actually changing the value. So this is simplified. And like I said, when we simplify fractions, this makes sense because 2 divided by 4, if you put that in a calculator, or if you think about it mentally, that's 0.5, right? And 1/2 is also 0.5. So we're not actually changing the value of this fraction when we do this. We're just simply taking larger numbers that we have and making them smaller if we can. So with that being said, I encourage you to pause the video and work through example 2 if you can. Assuming we have worked through it, let's work through it together. So a common value that we can divide both 3 and 6 by is 3. So let's divide both the numerator and denominator by 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 6 divided by 3 is 2. And we can't reduce this anymore. And this is 1/2. Another thing, as we can see here, we got 1/2 here for 3/6 and 1/2 here for 2/4. We can also have the same value or the same equivalency even if we have different numbers, because 3 divided by 6, that's also 0.5. So that's also one thing to point out as well. Looking at example 3, we have 4/16. So I encourage you to pause the video, and now let's work through it together. So a common value that we can divide both 4 and 16 by is 4. So I'm going to divide both of these by 4. 4 divided by 4 is 1. 16 divided by 4 is 4. So this is 1/4. Looking at example 4, I encourage you to pause the video and try it on your own. And now let's work through together. So we have -15/20. So when I do this, when I'm going to reduce this, I am just going to not ignore that this negative is on the outside because it still makes the value of the fraction. But while we're simplifying, we can just pretend it's not there while we're in our simplification process. So I just like to draw some parentheses around this. So that way we know that negative is kind of just on its own right now. So let's now find a common value that we can divide for both 15 and 20 by. And in this case, we can divide by 5. So 15 divided by 5 is 3, and 15 divided by 20 is 4. So we got 3/4, and we also can't forget this negative here, so we're going to bring that out in front. So we got -3/4 as our answer. Looking at example 5, we have 16/24. Now I encourage you to pause the video, try it on your own, and now let's work through it together. In this one, we can divide both numbers by 4, get out an even value. So 16 divided by 4 is 4, and 24 divided by 4 is 6. Now, one thing you might realize is that 4 and 6, they're both even numbers. And we can actually simplify this more. Sometimes this happens where you divide both the numbers, and then you get out a fraction that's still going to be simplified. So you'll need to do another simplification to get it fully simplified. So we can divide both these values, 4 and 6, by 2. And 4 divided by 2 is 2, and 6 divided by 2 is 3. And in this case, we can't divide 2 and 3 by a common value, so this is our reduced fraction. Looking at example 6, we have 56 and 21. So I encourage you to pause the video and try this on your own. And now let's simplify this together. So 56 and 21 is a little bit more difficult to think about a value that we can reduce by. But if you do a little bit of work, you'll realize that we can divide both these numbers by 7. And 56 divided by 7 is 8, and 21 divided by 7 is 3. And we can't reduce that anymore, so that is our answer. Looking at example 7, we have 66/42. And let's just start off by, because both these numbers are even, let's just start off by dividing them both by 2. So 66 divided by 2 is 33. And let's bring out this negative because we can't forget about this negative that's here. So 66 divided by 2 is 33. And then 42 divided by 2 is 21. And now looking at this, is there another number that we can divide both these numbers evenly to reduce this fraction? And if you're thinking we can divide by 3, you are correct. 33 divided by 3 is 11, and 21 divided by 3 is 7. And then our last step is to not forget this negative. So we're going to draw out this negative. And our final reduced fraction is -11/7. Looking at example 8, I encourage you to pause the video and try this on your own. Now let's work through it together. So 108 and 144 are both even, so we can divide both of them by 2. But I encourage you to, if we can divide both of them by 2, see if you can divide both numbers by 4 instead to reduce the amount of steps that we have to do in between. In this case, you can divide by 4. 108 divided by 4 is 27. 144 divided by 4 is 36. And then we can divide these numbers by one more number, and that number is 9. 27 divided by 9 is 3, and 36 divided by 9 is 4. So our final reduced fraction is 3/4. Now, with all that in mind, everything we've done that has led us up to be able to successfully add fractions that have a common denominator. So let's start off by doing that. So whenever we have fractions with common denominators that have the same values in the bottom numbers like we see here, all you have to do is simply add the two numbers on the top and put it over whatever numbers on the bottom. So 1/2 plus 1/2, that is going to be 1 plus 1 over 2. 1 plus 1 is 2. And we're going to put that over 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. Looking at our second example, we have 3/2 plus 1/2. So it's going to be 3 plus 1 divided by 2. 4, and 3 plus 1 is 4. And then we'll put that over 2. 4 divided by 2 is 2. Looking at example 3, we have negative 10/5 plus 3/5. So we're going to take this negative, bring it up top. So we're going to have a negative 10 plus 3. We're going to divide that by 5. Negative 10 plus 3 is negative 7. So we're going to have negative 7, and then that's going to be over 5. So negative 7/5 is our answer. Looking at example 4, I encourage you to pause the video and let's work through it together. So this is over 3, and we're going to have negative 15, and then we're going to add positive 15 to that. And negative 15 plus positive 15 becomes 0, and we're going to put that over 3, and 0 divided by 3 is 0, because anything divided by 0 is 0. Looking at example 5, we have 17 plus 115 over 8, or 17/8 plus 115/8. So we're going to set this up. So 17 plus 115 over 8, and 17 plus 115 ends up being 132 over 8. And because both of these are even, we can divide by 2. But like I said, I would see if you can divide them by 4 first to reduce the amount of simplifications you have to do. So in this case, they're actually both divisible by 4, or we can both divide them by 4. And 132 divided by 4 is 33. And then 8 divided by 4 is 2. So we have 33/2. That's our answer for this one. Looking at example 6, we have negative 42/17 plus 93/17. So we're going to put a negative 42 here. We're going to add a 93. Put that over 17. Negative 42 plus 93 is 51. We're going to put that over 17. And actually, crazy enough, you wouldn't guess just by looking at this, but 17 is divisible by 51. We can actually divide 17 by 51, and you will get a whole number, and that is 3. That's our final answer for this one. Thank you, and I can't wait to see you for the next video.